everyone, and welcome back to Crafts by the Bow. Last time I showed you a card that I was making for a friend's retirement, and it was a 4-fold card, and I told you I would next time show you the box that I made to put in it. And so I'm going to show you the box right now. I'll just get my paper trimmer. The card itself used the waterfront stamp set, and I'm going to use it again on this, but I'm not actually going to do any stamping today. I'm just going to show you how to make the box. So I started off with a piece of 12 by 12. This is retired, and it's the old olive card that we used to be able to get, but I wanted to use old olive because I wanted greens as my card, and I didn't have any other in 12 by 12. But you can get lots of 12 by 12s now, just not this piece. So I'm going to cut this at 11. Take that piece off, by 7. Okay. I'm going to leave the cutter out of the way. And I need to score at 5 inches and again at 6 inches. There we go. And that little piece, it's going to form the spine of the book cover. So I'm just going to fold it and burnish it. I saw the design for this little box on Pinterest, and it was a lady called the Fancy Stamper, and she made a beautiful box. I've tweaked a few details, but the box was so nice I didn't need to tweak much at all, and I totally cased what she'd done. Now I'm using the Project Life corner rounder on this. If you have the new trifold punch that has a corner rounder on, or if you have the envelope punch board, that also has a corner rounder. So I've corner rounded all 4 edges, and now I'm going to choose DSP to go on it. And the DSP I've got is from the Sweet Soiree set that we had last year in the Occasions catalogue. I'm pretty sure it's Old Olive, and my card is as well. So what I've done is I've cut 2 pieces of the DSP, and I've cut these at 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, and again I've rounded the edges. And the next thing I need is a piece of ribbon, and I'm using some of the Tranquil Tide ribbon, and I've just roughly folded it in half, and I'm going to attach it before I attach the paper. Oops. Come on, little fast fuse. There we go. I want to hide the ribbon underneath the paper, so it's easier if I attach that first. And if you want to line up on your grid paper so you know you've got things in a straight line, that's what it's there for. Okay, so there we go. And that will create my little closure. I'm going to put it back to being flat, and I'm going to attach the DSP. It's got a nice border all the way around it. There we go. Now, we do need another little piece for here. So what I've done is I've cut a piece of Tranquil Tide, because that's going to be our sort of coordinating colour for this. And I cut the Tranquil Tide at 7/8 of an inch, and it was just a length that I had, because I knew I was going to be able to just trim it off at the bottom. And I've cut some of our DSP. I was going to use the other side, but I think that's just too many different colours and things. So I'm going to glue the DSP, which I cut at 3/4 of an inch. I'm just going to attach that to the Tranquil Tide piece, and then cut it as I need it. I'm not going to leave a little piece at the end. I'm going to run the DSP all the way down, and there will only be a tiny little border. There we go. And that's going to go all along here. I might run it so that it's the same length as this. So let me just find where that is. Cut it across. Mumbling to myself, sorry. There we are. And I'm going to attach this with wet glue just because it's going over that ribbon. This is such a sweet little box when it's finished. I first made one as a wedding card, and I put the gift card inside as well, and it looked so nice. So thank you, Fancy Stamper, for your tutorial on how to make it and your idea. There we go. Now we'll just leave that piece to dry and we'll make the base of the box. And for the base, you need a piece of the same colour, and I started with a 12 by 12 piece and I cut it to 10.5 by 8 5/8. And what I need to do now is pick up my trimmer, and you need to score it at 1 inch all the way around. So I'm just going to go round and do a 1 inch score on each side. There we go. And then next we need a 2 inch score all the way around. Just go back around. This is the base for most boxes that I make, and I think most crafters use this, just because it gives you a nice solid sided box. Okay. And then we're ready to cut. I don't know if you can see the score marks on it, but we're going to cut the smallest side, and it will be 1 square across by 2 squares. So I'm just going to cut on that score line. Just chop that out like that, and then I'm going to notch these pieces. So I'm going to cut down this one, and then I'm just going to take a little bit off the edges here, and that just helps when you're folding the edges in to make your box. You don't get too much bulk and you don't get little bits sticking out. So the same again at this side. I'm going to cut this piece out, cut down this line, and just notch this a little bit. This is the same style of template I use when I make boxes that have lids as well. And to make a lid, you just sort of make the same as this, but make it either 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch bigger all the way around. And that way you've got just that little tiny bit of extra space to get the lid over the bottom of the box. Nearly done. Cut that one out. There we are. I'll just pop these in the bin, and I won't stick them on by accident. There we go. Right, the next thing to do is to burnish all your creases. So I'm going to go over and do the 2 inch one first, and then the 1 inch one. Really easy. And when I'm making boxes, I do sometimes use tape, but I really like to use Tombow better, because if you haven't got something quite straight, it doesn't matter. You can just wiggle the card around a little bit before the Tombow glue dries. There we are. Right. So I'm going to start with the smaller sides, and we're going to put them in. There it is. I'm going to use the edges here to go in, and I'm going to fold it over them just to give it even more strength, and then these pieces will just glue down. So I'll start with the Tombow. I know not everybody tucks the edges in. I just find it gives you that little bit more stability on the corners. Just put a bit on that side and that side. Okay, so I'm going to hold the corner up there and the corner piece in there. See what I mean about you needing Tombow just in case it moves. So I'm just going to make sure my corners are lined up perfectly. That one is. Get a bit sticky doing this. And that one is. And now I can fold that over and just go along with my bone folder and make sure it's all glued down properly. There we are. And then just do the same with the other end. Don't worry about these long sides at the moment. Some more on this little flap here. The second one goes in a little bit easier because you've already got part of the structure from having that edge done. Fold the front over, lay it on its side, and just go over with your bone folder just to make sure those corners are in and laying flat. And now we can do these pieces. So I know it's difficult to see on the video. Hold it down, squash it in. And the last side. If you just crimp the edges a little bit with your fingers just to straighten them, then as your box dries, it will dry straight. You see how just notching those little edges in gives us those nice straight corners. And then for the bottom of the box, I've cut a piece of DSP just slightly smaller than the bottom. I cut it at 4.5 by 6 3/8, and it's just going to go in there. There's not any little edges to hide, but if it wasn't quite straight, this would certainly hide it for you. Pop that in there. Make sure it goes to all the edges. It just gives that finished look. When they take the card out of the box, there's still something to look at. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to glue this in here, but we need to put the edging on here. And I find it easier to do it now rather than when the cover's on. So I'm just going to get some more of our Tranquil Tide strips. Okay. And then again, we'll cut them to fit just in case one edge happens to be a tiny bit longer or a little bit shorter and you've got all your glue on and then it's difficult to move it. So remember, the Tranquil Tide was cut at 7/8 of an inch and the DSP was cut at 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put it right down to the very edge. I'm just going to get my snips and cut that extra piece off. And then the same on just two sides. We don't need to do the back because that's going to be glued onto the box. There's another piece of our DSP, and I know it's going to fit across. It's a quick little box to make once you get going, and once you've got the cutting and the scoring done, then really it's very simple just to pop it together and to decorate however you want. And you don't have to do double layers like I'm doing. You can just do DSP. And on the one that I made for the wedding, I did just DSP. I didn't feel like I needed any other sort of backing or anything. Now, if you wanted to measure these pieces before you started to stick them on, you could certainly do that, but I just find that sometimes the box isn't quite the same on all the sides. However carefully you've done it, it's just a little bit different. Okay, last piece. This would be really nice for any occasion. You could put any card inside, or even a set of cards if you wanted to make them and put a little set of cards in for a friend to give as a gift or a teacher gift. That would be really cute. This last piece. This little edging just makes that difference. Just adds a little bit. There we are. All done. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to attach it into our cover. And we're going to need to have glue on this edge and on the bottom. Here's where I usually end up covered in glue. You could use tear and tape on this bit if you wanted. It's just as strong. While I've got that glue out, I think that's best. Okay, now I'm lining it up with this score line here. Let's move that. And trying to make sure that I've got it in the middle. I'll just push the bottom down. And then I'm going to fold the spine up, turn it on its side, and just use my bone folder to make sure it's pressed onto that spine. That's it. Then that just needs to dry for a few minutes, so I'm going to close it while it's drying. And on the front, the same as I put on the front of the card, I've used my biggest scallop die. This time I've used the Tranquil Tide, and I used the next biggest of the oval dies. So this is not the largest, it's the next to largest, but this is the largest. and I'm just going to attach that onto there, just like this. So let's, you can see where I stamped first and didn't quite like the picture I'd made. I stamped the mountains in the Highland Heather, and I stamped off once and then stamped again, and I think that's quite a pretty colour. And then I used Old Olive for the little greenery, Pool Party for the water, So Saffron for the sunshine, and Tranquil Tide for the trees. Now, I'm just going to attach this. I'm only using the wet glue because the DSP has got sort of these foily pieces in, and sometimes I find that my tear and tape or my fast fuse peels off those little pieces, but I find that the wet glue doesn't. Okay, and I've just glued it over where the ribbon goes. So if there is a bulge at all from the ribbon, you won't be able to see it. And there we are. There's the box for my retirement card that I've made. And you can just use the little ties to tie the box up. And I think anybody would be delighted to receive a card in there, or even a set of cards for them to use. Oh, there we go. I hope you liked it, and I hope you like the card that fits in it too. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.